Connecticut public schools show 7-year-old second graders an image of a naked man with an erection standing over an upset and crying little girl. Who knows? Maybe it was just campaign literature for the Andrew Cuomo campaign. I'm Dr. Duke. He's Dave Fiorazzo, and this is the Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Katie is on maternity leave, but not to worry. The great Dave Fiorazzo is joining us today. All right, our first story takes place in Connecticut, where second graders were recently shown an absolutely disgusting picture of a man with an erection hovering over a crying little girl who had her hands buried in her face. So, with an introduction like that, I guess we got to show you the picture. Yep, there you go. Meant for second graders, 7-year-olds. This is what they had to see. We've even got a short video to accompany this, and let's take a look at that.
Some children are afraid that their mom and dad will beat them, or that their parents will fight. Other children have experienced an adult touching or putting their penis in the child's private parts or mouth, and they're terrified that this will happen again.
Yeah, Dave, I gotta ask this question. When did being a child become such a miserable, dark, gloomy, nasty business? If I got to go back and quote the Savior here. Woe unto you who corrupteth one of them. It would be better you had never been born. In another gospel, he says, you would better have a millstone tied to your throat and thrown into the ocean.
Yep.
I think he's dead right. I think there is nothing nastier in this world than corrupting the innocence of a child. To take children under this new progressive way of educating kids and to turn their lives into disgusting, ridiculously sexualized, horrible little snippets like this. The school's come out and said basically, well, we didn't intend it for that second grade course.
Of course.
But there's too much of this going on. You're going to see more of it today. Too much of this going on for this to be accidental.
So, Dr. Duke, we have an adult audience primarily, and I'm embarrassed to talk about this, but they're showing this to second graders. It's one thing to have it in health class of high schoolers, right? But second graders, there's going to be people that are going to see this and go, you guys are making this up.
Yep.
How do you respond to that?
I mean, we include the links on our show, so you'll be able to follow the links. This is from Connecticut. This is the second graders in Greenwich, Connecticut, were shown an animated video that displays the silhouette of a man with a graphic full erection standing over what has been described as a sad girl during a lesson on social and emotional learning. There's your problem right there. This social emotional learning is something that entered the schools through Common Core. It is the argument that the purpose of education is not knowledge. It's not grades, it's not merit, it's not hard work, it's not college preparation, it's not preparation for career and life. Social and emotional learning says that that's not fair. See, not everybody gets an A in math. Not everybody writes well enough to get an A in English class. If we can transform education away from actual subject matter and make it about social and emotional learning, right? A learning and education that makes them good progressives, what liberals consider to be good progressives, and emotional learning, right? Everybody can feel, not everybody can think. Everybody can feel justly or unjustly. Not everybody can logic their way to what is true. And you can see what an insulting thing this is. And so when you take big steps forward, and let's be clear. Your teachers, your elementary school education teachers, your middle school, your high school teachers, they're not even qualified anymore to get your kid to be literate. They signed up to be English, math, and science teachers. Look at where your kids place nationally, internationally, right? Yep. They can't even do the hashtag job you were hired to do. Teach science to my damn kid. Can't do it. And so we're going to put them with no actually added training. We're going to put these failed teachers in charge of your kids' social and emotional welfare. Where's their sociological degree? Where is their psychology degree? They got an education degree that's worthless. That's why they can't teach, right? I get it. Education departments are a joke. People with degrees in education are not really degreed people. So I get why a high school English teacher or a middle school math teacher can't do it. But now you're putting them in charge of the social emotional welfare of our kids, and you have no additional training. This could never. What could possibly go wrong with that?
But they need more money.
Oh, that's
more
the
education
answer.
funding.
Sure,
that's the answer.
More. We need more. We need more graphic novels. We need more people making videos of what is, for lack of a better word, child pornography. And it's not even just child pornography. It's child pornography in the guise of rape.
Can you imagine if someone out in the public tried to show a second grader
that your daughter comes walking by my living room on the street, and I invite her in and give her milk and cookies and show her pictures like that? Where am I going to spend the next 25 years of my life, Dave?
Behind bars.
Exactly. if you wouldn't kill me first, right? This is exactly what you're talking about. This is, I don't know what's going to happen when we show videos like this. YouTube is unrelentingly willing to shut us down. This is what is so frustrating about the social giants. Twitter and Facebook have all been accused of not doing enough to stop sex trafficking, right? The big social media giants that are banning conservatives for blinking the wrong eyelid are not going after those who are targeting children on their platforms. This is an example of this. I can bet you what has happened when we've shown video like this before, when we've had controversial stories like this before, is the actual school, the actual images, the actual school's not paying a price for this through social media. We, who are reporting on it to bring this to the masses, to show this to the American people, will get flagged.
Yep.
And it will say to us, so if you don't see what we're talking about here, if they kill this entire, well, if they kill it, you'll never know it was here. It's because that's how they work. So a couple weeks ago, we talked about Cardi B grinding on the stage during her Grammys award, right?
Primetime TV.
Primetime. We didn't do it. We didn't make the video. We didn't grind our crotches against the crotches of other women. We reported on it using an image that was taken from the major news sites. They used it. No problem with that. When we did it, when Cardi B did it, no censorship. When all the major news sites picked it up and showed it, no censorship. When we tried to show it to you, censorship. So I can only imagine where this is going to end up.
So back to the details, the New York Post reported that the kids were shown a cartoon titled Alfred Jr. and Shadow, a short story about being scared during a virtual class that the Greenwich Free Press said was a lesson on social and emotional learning. It's a lesson for them, Duke. Let this be a lesson to you, talking about being normal scared, embarrassed scared, and painful scared. I never heard of these before.
Yeah, you can see what they're trying to do. They're trying to take little children, as apparently young as 7, and describe different ways of being scared. This is seriously what they're doing. They want your kids to be aware of how many different ways you can be terrorized and traumatized. Well, Greenwich School Superintendent Dr. Tony Jones addressed the controversial video in an email to second grade families, acknowledging, quote, around the midway point in the video, there is reference to situations in which children may become afraid, including becoming afraid of abuse, both physical and sexual. The content at this point in the video was not appropriate for our GPS second grade classrooms. I get it. We'll put it back in 4th grade where we belong.
For our next story, a public school in Ohio now is asking 9th grade students to read a slam poetry book that discusses a young girl abandoning her Christian faith, talking to drug dealers, and partaking in sexual acts. It's Hillard Bradley High School near Columbus, Ohio. They want 9th grade English students to read a slam poetry book. It's entitled The Poet X. The school provided limited alternatives, and students must opt out of the assigned readings if parents do not feel comfortable with the graphic content in the book.
Well, and I'm betting you by that tortured explanation, they don't send a waiver home to parents. They're not saying, hey, we're giving you a heads up.
Right.
We're about to read slam poetry, which, by the way, is fake poetry. Poetry is a long, thought-over, crafted thing. Slam poetry is kind of this beat poetry. It's half rap. It's improvisational, right? It's a way of conferring laurel gardens for laurel wreaths on certain kinds of ethnic poetry to make it much more legitimate, right? And so let me read with you some of the imagery from this poem. It's not any one thing that makes me wonder about the capital God, about a holy trinity that doesn't include the mother. It's all the things. Just seems as I get older, I began to really see the way the church treats a girl like me differently. Sometimes it feels like I'm only worth what's under my skirt, not between my ears. See,
Oh, Lord.
Explain to me.
Unbelievable.
How does any church, explain that. How does a church treat you differently because of the kind of girl you are. We've heard a lot of things about church malfeasance. I've never heard this before. Churches making girls feel like the only important part of them is what's between their legs. That sounds like the mainstream media, honey. That sounds like the rappers you're going to go start hanging out with. Right? You're going to leave the Catholic Church for sexually objectivizing you. And you're going to go hang out with rappers and thugs. Have you listened to their music? Have you paid attention to hip-hop culture when it comes to the objectification of what's between a girl's legs? This is the kind of garbage crap that we've gotten rid of Shakespeare. We've gotten rid of the classics. We've gotten rid of even Dr. Seuss to put this crap in your kids' schools.
It is a high school, but notice the deeper problem here is they're trying to remove God. Not only that, the Father, right? It's okay to pray, Our Mother who art in heaven, but don't dare mention Father, a holy trinity that doesn't include Mother. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so that's what bothers her. So there's no mother in the Trinity, and then of course the church, girls like her. It goes on to say, sometimes I feel that turning the other cheek could get someone like my brother killed. Now we're talking about police brutality, right? Sometimes I feel my life would be easier if I didn't feel like such a debt to a God that don't really seem to be out here checking for me, right? See, God's not out here. He's not, providing me with all the clothes and the bling. And so therefore, right, in my neighborhood, therefore, he's not here. One of the poems in this book is also entitled, I Think the Story of Genesis is Mad Stupid.
So throughout God, throughout creation.
That's right, the Bible.
Right, the Bible.
And how about this for ninth graders? Other portions of the book describe graphic sexual activity. One poem titled Fingers, and I think you know where we're going, describes masturbation. Another titled Hands describes the main character's Yomara touching her love interest in a classroom. Another describes Yomara and her love interest preparing to have sexual intercourse. The poem was written by Elizabeth Acevedo, a national poetry slam champion. Read rapper in a better packaging, and daughter of Dominican immigrants. She won the prestigious poetry prizes for the Poet X. Did you know that?
Slam
poetry.
Slam poetry. Slam champion. Hey, the district's goal, though, Duke, they had good intentions here.
No, they did.
It's all about the intentions.
Don't they always?
Yep. Their goal was to provide poetry written by non-white authors.
See, this is the thing. They got rid of Shakespeare because Shakespeare wrote about kings and queens, which is classist. They got rid of Shakespeare because Shakespeare wrote about two young star-crossed lovers who commit suicide. That's a bad example. They got rid of Shakespeare because he wrote unreal things like Midsummer Night's Dream with fairies out in the woods and kids running around mad with love. Such a bad influence. And they've replaced it with what?
Slam poetry.
Got to get black writers in here. Why? And notice what the assumption is being made by the schools. That black literature for young black kids, is all about sex, rape, violence, gangs. Is that not the most paternalistic racism you've ever seen? I mean, so if we're going to represent the black experience, like as if every African American in this country growing up across from shore to shore lives in a barrio somewhere, it's not true. It's a lie. It's a complete and utter lie. Yet this is how racist the overseers of our public schools are. Our intentions are good. We're going to give black kids and white kids, we're going to make black and white kids read books that we think represents the black experience, right? And we think all blacks are being raped and having sex and giving up their religion. Yeah, is that your experience? Blacks in this country have no use for the Bible and religion. Is that? I just watched yesterday at Easter time how all across this country were great images on TV of wonderful black choirs. You're telling me that reality couldn't be put into this. We can't have them reading about black spirituality, how the black churches and black Christian gospel has elevated people out of poverty. Now, can't have that. Got to drop out of school and go engage your fingers and your hands in classroom settings. This is exactly what they're doing to your kids.
Well, we go down to Texas for this next story, and Leander Independent School District High School, they've got a book list. For those asking how the Leander High School book list descriptions are inaccurate.
This is a suburb of Austin, Texas. Remember, keep Austin weird. Do you recognize, Mom and Dad, this is their book list, high school reading list. Do you see one single classic on that list? Do you see one single uplifting great book of Western culture on that list? Do you think anybody of Shakespeare, Mark Twain? Do you see To Kill a Mockingbird? Do you still see Huckleberry Finn?
Nope.
What do you see here? It is out over and over and over again. This is the new library of radical progressive kidlit that is completely taken over all the books that your kids read. It's all about sex, transgenderism, homosexuality, rebellion, anti-religion, anti-Christianity. It is anti-Western culture. Staggering. I mean, so before, that's not even the story we're doing here. But I want you to, I'm glad you had a chance to look at that and see that there's not even a book recognizable, that a book that would be considered actual literature of intellectual quality. This is just political posturing masquerading as stories.
You know what? This is another one of those cases where we're talking to primarily adults here, and I feel uncomfortable talking about what this is actually about.
Yeah, show the cover of the book, Mike. Now, this is the one book, Out of Darkness, right, that we're talking about. And it's about a young girl who is raped repeatedly by her stepfather. So brutally raped, a lot of violence. And at one point, her younger brother is forced to is tied to a tree, tied to a pole, forced to watch the stepfather sexually abuse the child. Let's go to some of the, now, Leander High School initially said that this wasn't in. This didn't happen in our schools. Our kids weren't learning about stepfathers raping their daughters. They said no until finally we got a list of their books, and it took somebody going through the books to find out that Leander Public Schools were flat out lying about this. Go ahead, this excerpt from Out of Darkness. Let me read this to you. And I say again, if you have got kids at home, please send them out of the room. I'd rather you turn off the Dr. Duke show permanently than to allow kids to hear what I'm going to read you. So get rid of them now, please. This is the father. Shh, he said. He took one of her hands in his and squeezed it. Come on over here. He pulled her to her feet, close to him. He shifted in his pajamas, and the part of him that made him a man stuck out, reddish purple and frightening. She had never seen one before except on a baby. This was different. He lifted her hand to his mouth and licked it. Then he lowered her hand down and closed it around his hardness. His hand moved hers. His left hand gripped her shoulder, pressing her head tight against the hard, flat plane of his stomach. She watched her hand move back and forth like it didn't belong to her. In the distance, she heard the train pass. A moment later, the thing leaped. Henry's whole body shuddered, and a hot mess lay across her palm and between her fingers. Henry wiped himself quickly with a handkerchief. Then, never letting go of her shoulder, he urged her toward the door. Come on, he said once it was open. He walked her to the bathroom and then guided her hand to the sink. Go to the next one. Look, and you can, by all means, get angry about this, but you got to hear it. I'm tired of playing by rules that they don't play by. They can show this to your high school kids. They can show this to a 9th grader. You can hear, Mom and Dad, because if you hear, then maybe you'll think twice when you hear the graphicness. Maybe you'll think twice about sending your kid back to the school. Go to the next one here. The stepfather says to the little girl, "What do you do with a field you own? You plow it." He walked over to Naomi. Lie down, he told her. Don't do this, Henry. Naomi's lips trembled as she spoke. Down, Henry ordered. She dropped to her knees. The clouds cleared then, and tears shone on her face. Beto wanted to run to her, but he couldn't. Lie back, open your legs, stop crying. Don't try to tell me this is the first time you've done this, Henry said. Henry, she protested, I haven't ever. You've lied enough already. And I'm going to stop there.
Yeah.
He
goes through with it.
He goes through with it in absolutely disgustingly. Tell me, is there anything in Shakespeare, anything in the Iliad, anything in the Sir Gawain and the Green Knight? Is there anything in those classic books of Western culture that we've deemed so irredeemably bad now that rivals this in its degeneracy? We live in a culture, as you can tell from today's shows, so utterly debauched that public schools, rather than try to raise kids above this corrupt culture, they are drowning our kids in it. You know what we need? I'm going to set the moms aside. Moms, I get it. You should be really angry about what you've seen, but I'm calling out you dads. Dads, What happened to dads who would end this? What happened to the dads who were the stand-up dads who would not allow their children, particularly their young daughters, to hear this kind of garbage in school? Where are you, fathers? Have you been so emasculated by the hashtag #MeToo movement? Have you become such eunuchs that you'll allow your kids to be used for these purposes? What happened? Toxic masculinity. I'd kill for a little toxic masculinity. How about limp-wristed, Viagra-needing, completely clueless kind of masculinity? How about that? Maybe that's what we're dealing with now. What this culture needs is men to stand up. And so to that end, the entire week on the Instant Classic is going to be devoted to a man who did stand up, a man by the name of St. Thomas More. The story was written about him by Robert Bolt, the playwright. A Man for All Seasons is the name of the story, a historical story. It was written in 1960. In 1966, it literally became the #1 Best Picture, won the Oscar, starring Paul Scofield as Thomas More. Thomas More, you may recall, was under pressure from Henry VIII. He was a solid Catholic. He did not want to give up his faith. He did not believe that Henry VIII had the moral authority to deem himself head of the English church simply because he wanted a divorce. And Henry, who actually liked Thomas, they got along great up until this moment, up until the crisis of the divorce. We watch slowly in the play how More is surrounded and surrounded and surrounded, not allowed to follow his conscience and to resist this, and how it ultimately cost him his life. Here's a great quote from the book, Men Who Stand Up, week on the Dr. Duke Show with Robert Bolt and the Man for All Seasons. Well, St. Thomas More's, his young son-in-law was a man of great radical conviction. He did not like the corruption in the Catholic Church. There was very little to like about it. But at one point, William Roper his name is William Roper, he had this conversation with his father. William Roper said, "So now, More, you would give the devil the benefit of the law. Would you go, don't forget, Thomas More was the Chancellor of England, the Chief Law Officer of England at the time, and his son-in-law said to him, "So now, More, would you give the devil the benefit of the law?" And Sir Thomas More replied, "Yes, what would you do? Cut a great road through the law to get after the devil?" Roper said, "Yes, I would cut down every law in England if that was what it took to get after the devil, to remove the devil." Sir Thomas responded brilliantly. "This is amazing." "Oh," he said. "And when the last law was down, Roper, and the devil turned round upon you, then where would you hide, Roper? The laws all being flat. This country is planted thick with laws, from coast to coast. Man's laws, not God's. And if you cut them down, and you're just the man to do it, do you really think you could stand upright in the winds that would blow then? Yes, I'd give the devil benefit of law for my own safety's sake." Law, right? You think about the Constitution that the Founding Fathers gave us. Our rights are ensconced in law. We are a nation of laws, not a nation of rulers. We are a nation who recognizes that our rights and responsibilities come from the Creator. They don't come from men. Don't be like C.S. Lewis, men without chest. It's time for American fathers to stand up and stop this nonsense right now. All right, if you're a fan of the show, please consider a one-time tax-deductible donation to support our Patriot Club, and we will send you our signature tumbler right here. Visit patriotclub.us, that's patriotclub.us, and just a quick reminder to please download our Freedom Project Media app. Simply search Freedom Project Media in your app store, and once you've downloaded it, make sure you allow us to notify you. And that wraps up this show for Freedom Project. I'm Dr. Duke. He's Dave Fiorazzo. Until next time, stay educated, my friends.